Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Well, there are 16 teams that are still playing in college basketball. For everybody else, the season is done, and you know what that means? It means it's portal season, baby. That's right. The transfer portal officially opened on Monday. And if you're new to this page, I'll tell you what, we are not the type of college hoop show that gives up talking college basketball the day the season ends. We're going to cover a lot of portal, probably pretty much every single episode from now until about the middle of May, late May, when the portal is closed, when NBA draft decisions are done. But the transfer portal officially opened on Monday. And I do think it's very important. Let's get to some news and notes on some big names that are already in, and also some names that maybe we're already starting to figure out where they could end up. It's day one of the portal, baby. Let's get into it. I would say probably the biggest name that has entered the transfer portal so far. And by the way, we are recording this about 5 p.m. Eastern time on Monday night. So by the time you see this, there could be 10, 15 new names. We will get to them as soon as we can. Like I said, we're talking portal pretty much every day. Biggest name that I've seen go in, intriguing name, Mackenzie Mbako, forward from Indiana, okay? If you are new to this, I'll tell you what, 2 springs ago, we talked Mackenzie Mbako probably more than the Mbako family, okay? This was a 5-star player in the class of 2023, was committed to Duke, decommits when Kyle Filipowski comes back, and really like middle of April till middle of May, there was just a new piece of information seemingly every day. Visited Kansas. He ends up committing to Indiana. I vividly remember this. We were waiting for his commitment. It doesn't come. I was actually on vacation in the Bahamas. First big vacation I had taken in a long time. He commits. I do a live reaction video from the hotel because he was that big time of a player. He goes to Indiana. And listen, I'll say this. I don't think it's I think he had a good 2 years at Indiana. I don't think he had a great 2 years, but I always thought he was a little bit more of a developmental player. I didn't think he was a Cooper Flagg, Cade Cunningham, come in, be a super duper star day one. But I thought he had 2 pretty productive years at Indiana. This past season was the better one for sure. 12.5 points per game, 33% three-point shooting. I think that last number is the big one. If he was a 37, 38, 39% free throw or three-point shooter, this is a kid that would be in the NBA right now. But he's 6'8". He's got all the athleticism, all the size, all of the skill. And on Monday, like I said, I would argue he's probably the biggest name that actually officially entered the transfer portal on Monday. He kind of left all his options open. He's going to test the NBA draft waters. He is in the portal. He would consider coming back to Indiana. Listen, I don't have this sourced. I don't know if Indiana is going to be the best fit for him going forward. I think he's a really good player, but I think Darren DeVree, I think he is ready to move on from a lot of the Woodson era guys. And really, if you've watched Darren DeVree's, teams in the past, a lot of skill, a lot of shooting. I don't know that Mackenzie Mbako is the perfect fit. And I think Indiana fans are okay with it. They wish him well, no ill will, but maybe it's best if everybody moves on. So for me, my assumption is that he hits the portal. He's going to field offers. I'm sure he will at least somewhat go through the draft process. But I'll also tell you this, if he decides to come back to college basketball, even if maybe he hasn't quite been what we were expecting, it doesn't mean that he isn't going to be high priority. And I think he is going to be the highest of priority because he has NBA size, NBA athleticism, and all he's got to do is get that three-point shot straight, and he will be phenomenal. I think it's a little early to start talking schools. I will say this, though. I was thinking a little bit about this on Monday when I saw his name enter. He did have, from what I remember, a very good relationship with Andrew Slater when he was in high school, okay? If you don't know who Andrew Slater is, he was an elite. I mean, we're talking MJ-type guy in the grassroots media reporting game, left to take an NBA job. He was recently, I believe unofficially, I don't believe it's official yet, been named the GM of the NC State Wolfpack following Will Wade there. And so there's an obvious tie with Will Wade's new staff just something to keep your eye on. Listen, when a player like this enters the portal, he's going to hear from everybody. So again, I think it's a little early to presume anything, but NC State would be a school that I would keep an eye on for him. But again, if he decides to come back to college, he is going to hear from just about everybody. By the way, I do want to mention before I get to anybody else, because I think this is always an important note in the portal. A guy can enter thinking that he has an idea where he wants to go. But sometimes once you enter, you're kind of blown away by the number of schools that are interested, that offer whatever. And so you see this all the time. Guys enter expecting to go to a school. They end up, hearing from schools they never imagined. Then all of a sudden they go somewhere else. So just keep that in mind. When I'm giving out schools, it's always subject to change. This stuff moves fast. It moves furious, et cetera, et cetera. Let's keep it going. Beyond Mackenzie Mbako, another former five-star, late Sunday announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal. Really intriguing name, Josan Sanan, 6 foot, probably 6'5", 6'6", guard forward wing who played last year as a freshman at Arizona State. Really interesting backstory on him. Okay, so first of all, he was a member of the class of 2025. He then announces around this time last year he's going to reclassify. He commits to Tommy Lloyd and the Arizona Wildcats, and then Arizona's offseason kind of unfolds. Caleb Love comes back. The guard spots are maybe a little bit more fluid or less fluid than everybody was expecting. He decides, this is Josan Sanan, to enter, to reopen his recruitment. He ends up committing to Arizona State this season, okay? So he was a five-star. He goes to Arizona State. And I'll say this, considering that Arizona State was kind of a train wreck, he was actually not terrible as a freshman. 12 points per game. He only appeared in 15 games, a lot of injuries, this and that. But by the end of the year, he was playing a ton. Ends up averaging 12 points, 37% shooting from three. And really the last couple games, he played really well. 19 against Arizona last week of the regular season, 16 against Texas Tech, 18 against BYU. But he is in the portal. He is leaving Arizona State. And I will tell you this. The early rumors, the early indications are that it could be St. John's that he ends up going to. Again, it's early. We'll see. It remains to be seen. It's worth noting he is from the northeast part of the country, originally from the Boston area, went up to Vermont Academy. So I think St. John's is the leader right now early for Josan Sanan. And I think what's interesting is I actually think that is about as perfect of a fit as you can get. He's crazy athletic. He plays hard. He's a little rough around the edges. He just needs really good coaching. And there's no better coaching than Rick Pitino. If that happens, I think it is about as good of a fit as you can have. And I think he's one of those guys that could come in, again, rough around the edges, play for Pitino for 2 years, and boom, 2 years from now, we're talking about him as a first-round pick, almost a little bit like we're talking about R.J. Lewis, of course, the Big East Player of the Year. Let's stay with kind of the St. John's theme because there was an interesting name that entered the portal last week, or at least publicly announced it, that was tied to St. John's as well. That's former Kentucky forward and Providence forward Bryce Hopkins, okay? So Bryce Hopkins, again, unique story, was at Kentucky in the 2021-22 season, doesn't really play, transfers to Providence. He was actually excellent for Providence 3 seasons ago, last year under Ed Cooley. Star player, goes to the NCAA tournament. Ironically, they lose to Kentucky. That was the Bryce Hopkins return game in the 2023 NCAA tournament. Ed Cooley leaves for Georgetown. Bryce Hopkins decides to stay at Providence to play for Kim English. Has a really good start to his junior year. Unfortunately, suffers a knee injury. Tries to miss all of the back half of last year. Tries to come back this year. And as you can see on the screen, great find by producer Matt, averaged 17 points and 8 boards, but was only able to play a handful of games this year. So he decides after the season, probably just good for a fresh start. But what was interesting was he was linked early to Rick Pitino and St. John's. Now, what I would say, listen, recruit who you want to recruit, play for who you want to play for. He doesn't strike me as a Pitino guy. Remember, what was Pitino's biggest complaint 2 years ago when his team was struggling? My guys aren't athletic enough. Remember what he said about Joel Soriano and all those guys? They're too slow, the lateral quick. Listen, Bryce Hopkins is a very talented player, but I wouldn't call him an A+++ athlete. And so it seems like a weird fit. But I also don't know that that's where Bryce Hopkins end up. There was rumors that he was going to visit St. John's. Now he may or may not be going. And what appears to be in the mix is a visit to Georgetown, which of course is noteworthy because that's of course where Ed Cooley is now, the coach that basically coached him to his best level of success as a college basketball player. What was when Ed Cooley was at Providence. He is at St. John's now. And so he's at Georgetown now, excuse me. And so I just bring it up because if this kid is going to enter the portal, go somewhere familiar, go somewhere comfortable. I think Ed Cooley got the best idea. I'm not telling you where to go. It doesn't really matter to me. I have no ties to him, to Providence, to St. John's, but that one would be one that makes sense. I'm guessing if he hears what he wants to hear from Ed Cooley, that one could get done pretty quick. By the way, producer Matt, I did not give you this one, but I just saw that Jaden Pierre, who was actually Providence's third leading scorer, Bryce Hopkins' teammate, also entered the portal. Really like him. 12 points per game this season. Pretty good three-point shooter. He's a little bit of an undersized guard. Very curious where he would end up because I think he's a very good player. I don't know that he's like a game changer at the high major level. I think he's good as like that third guard, first guy off the bench, whatever. But he averaged 12.5 per game at Providence this year. And, he's a guy that's proven it at the high major level. I think he's going to have plenty of opportunities. Let's keep it going. Feels like there was a lot of movement in Big East, with Big East teams here over the last couple days. And the next guy I want to get to, Dalen Swain. Okay, so Dalen Swain, very interesting story, as you know, because he was at Xavier. And, of course, Xavier's head coach, Sean Miller, just left. So this is a kid. Sean Miller did a good job, I thought, the last few years at Xavier, finding these kind of under-the-radar guys, the guys that maybe weren't 5 stars, weren't whatever, bring them in, develop them. And that's who Dalen Swain is. He is a kid that was about a fringe top 100 recruit 2 years ago who turned into a very productive college player as a sophomore this past year under Sean Miller. Third leading scorer, 6'8" forward, super athletic. 11 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, as you can see on the screen, 2.5 assists, 25% three-point shooting. That, to me, is the big thing. Almost like what I said a few minutes ago with Mackenzie Mbako. If Dalen Swain was a 36%, 37% three-point shooter, I think he'd be an NBA-type prospect. But he's not, at least not right now. That's not a knock. That's just a reality, and that's probably part of the reason why he is coming back to college basketball for another season. It's early. This is not sourced. I'm just speculating. The obvious landing spot to me would be follow Sean Miller to Texas. And I think, this is part of the reason I think Sean Miller took Texas is because of the fact that just like, I don't know that you could keep a guy like this at Xavier. I mean, this is a guy that I think has NBA potential. And I think an SEC school would have swooped in or a Big 12 school would have swooped in and offered him a lot of money. Now you're Sean Miller. You are that SEC school that's offering everybody a lot of money. We talked a little bit about Sean Miller going to Texas on Sunday night show. But I think it makes sense for him to follow Sean Miller. So we will see. It is early, but, he enters the portal hours after Sean Miller leaves. It would make sense for me to follow him. But if he doesn't, my guess is he is going to be as prioritized as pretty much anybody. Really quickly, a couple other names to know. One, Isaac McNeely. So he's at Virginia, leading scorer. And another one. Listen, I think this is what we should expect going forward, right? Is that if a coaching change happens, I think the assumption has to be that pretty much everybody is going to enter the portal, and then sometimes they'll get re-recruited. I mean, look at Arkansas last year. Musselman leaves. Everybody enters the portal. Kentucky, Calipari leaves. Everybody enters the portal. By the way, I think it's worth noting, Kevin Young at BYU, he re-recruited Richie Saunders, but Richie Saunders entered the portal at BYU. So Isaac McNeely, it was the leading scorer at Virginia, 14 points per game. How about this? 42% shooting from three, took 7 threes a game. So it's not like he was shooting 1 or 1.5 threes. 42% on 7 threes a game. It's not an exaggeration to say he is one of the best three-point shooters in college basketball this year. Again, just entered the portal on Monday, but we know how this stuff works. Schools are, I'm not saying they're tampering. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you do your homework. This coach leaves. What is this kid's plan? Where would he be interested in? And so I think a couple of schools to keep an eye on. Louisville, they need the replacement for Rain Smith, who, of course, was just a rock star this year for Pat Kelsey, following him from Charleston to Louisville. He was unbelievable this year at Louisville, and so I would expect Isaac McNeely to be in the mix there. The other one that would be interesting, they don't have a coach right now. Isaac McNeely is originally from the state of West Virginia. So you wonder, is this a scenario where could West Virginia try to get in the mix? The problem is West Virginia doesn't have a coach right now. So we'll see what happens with West Virginia. Jared Calhoun from Utah State appears to be the leader there. He's from the Bob Huggins coaching tree, so we'll see what happens. But Isaac McNeely, elite three-point shooter, I think he will be in the mix. Couple other names, the big one, this is actually a kid we talked about in our portal update a week ago when we opened portal play. Trayson, when we opened portal play, it's not a tournament. When we opened the portal talk a week ago, Trayson Eaglestaff, okay? So we talked about him at North Dakota, and he kind of basically announced that he was entering the transfer portal. First of all, just an incredible scorer of the basketball, okay? So this was a kid, like I said, was at North Dakota. The big story, of course, he drops 40 points in a game against Alabama earlier this season. Just phenomenal in that game. Where everyone was watching, like, who is this kid? Just absolutely unbelievable in terms of the talent, the skill level, this, that. So he enters the portal, 18.9 points per game, 36% three-point shooting. The crazy part about it is that, like I told you, that three-point shooting number was actually a little bit down from previous years because I think teams were really pretty much sort of locked in on him. And so because of it, I think the numbers actually went down. Beyond that 40-point game against Alabama, how about 51 against South Dakota State in the Summit League tournament, which tied a record for most points in that tournament. It was most points, by the way, should mention, in a Division I game this season. So Trayson Eaglestaff, 51 points in the Summit League tournament against South Dakota State, the most points scored this season. Bring it up because, as you can see on the scroller, Joe Tipton put out the first list of schools earlier on Monday. This was a kid that kind of publicly announced, hey, I'm transferring last week. A lot of schools: Kentucky, Alabama, Gonzaga, on and on and on, Michigan, St. John's, Kansas, etc. A couple things here. One, I actually think Kentucky should feel like they're in pretty good shape. Again, it's early. Once you're officially in the portal, you start hearing from schools you could have never imagined. But I'll tell you, sometimes you just got to follow the tea leaves. And when this kid enters the portal and he's doing interviews with Kentucky media the day that he announces he's leaving, and that was last week, probably a pretty good sign that he's interested in Kentucky. He did an interview with my buddy Jacob Polacek, who's awesome at what he does. He works for KSR and KSR Plus. But listen, let's do some mental math here. If the kid isn't even in the portal and he's doing interviews with Kentucky outlets, you got to feel pretty good. If he does end up at Kentucky, I think it'd be a home run for Mark Pope because, man, oh man, he can put the ball in the basket. And then I'd also say, you'd have to think Alabama would be in the mix. We talked about it last week. If you're Alabama and a dude drops 40 on you, you're pulling him aside in the handshake line and saying, hey, man, if you decide to enter the portal, we have a spot for you. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying, probably what Alabama would have done, should have done, could have done in that hypothetical scenario. I'm not saying they did it. I'm just saying if I was at Alabama, I'd probably just say, hey, man, it was great playing against you. Hope to see you in this Crimson Tide jersey someday. So bring it up because he's another one. His name had already been out there, so we're starting to see a list of schools for him. I think those are the big ones as of, again, 5 p.m. Eastern time here on Monday night. Keep an eye out. More big names will be entering. We'll be updating basically every day. By the way, great call, producer Matt. CBB Transfers on Twitter. CBB Transfers on Twitter for all of your late-breaking news. Should mention, by the way, before we get out of here, a couple quick things. First of all, if you're going to any games this weekend, Kentucky fan, Tennessee fan, going to Indy. If you're a BYU fan, going to Newark, SeatGeek.com. You see that SeatGeek logo right there? We're working with SeatGeek, number one ticketing app in the App Store. Number one ticketing app. Hundreds of thousands of tickets purchased. It's an incredible app. They do great stuff, but here is the best part. This is the cool part. If you're a listener of the Aaron Torres pod, guess what? You use promo code Torres. You get $20 off your first purchase, not just for NCAA tournament games. You want to go to a concert. You want to go to a basketball game. You want to go to a hockey game. You want to go to a Major League Baseball game. My mom used it to buy tickets to a hockey game the other night. SeatGeek.com. Use promo code Torres. Gets you $20 off. Also should mention, we do want to thank our friends, our partners, BetUS TV, BetUSTV.com. Listen, we've been with them for several years now. They took us to the Final Four last year in Phoenix, We were there to watch UConn cut down the nets against Purdue. We will be back this year in San Antonio. Maybe Purdue will be there. UConn certainly won't be, but we're there on behalf of BetUS TV. It's that time of year. All the sports are overlapping. College basketball, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, those playoffs are going to start to ramp up. And what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to go to betustv.com for all the late-breaking coverage, information, and more. betustv.com is the way to go. That is Monday's transfer portal update. That is everything you need to know that has happened as of about 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Like I said, this stuff is always subject to change, so make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel.